The fall of an ally. How Japan cornered the US dollar. For decades, Japan was the silent pillar, upholding one of the most powerful mechanisms of the global financial system, unwavering trust in the US dollar. But something has changed. In a move that shook the foundations of Wall Street and alarmed governments worldwide, Tokyo decided to sell a colossal amount of US Treasury bonds. A strategic partner. Yes, but more than that. An invisible pillar that provided liquidity to the American government through consistent purchases of Treasury bonds. Washington's greatest geopolitical rival is now the biggest financier of American debt. The answer lies in November when the Trump administration announced 25% tariffs on Japanese electric vehicles, citing national security threats. The official reason: alleged market imbalances caused by Japanese subsidies and technologies. In reality, it was something else. Fear. Fear of Japan's technological leap. Government, businesses, families, and students. Since 2022, the dollar's share of global reserves has been inspired by the SWIFT system but built with decentralized architecture. This new payments network aims to eliminate the dollar from transactions between emerging economies. As the global picture worsened, the US was also battling a deep internal institutional crisis. Economic outlook too negative. And BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager, declared as political instability the top global risk for 2025. After the courts blocked tariffs on South Korean semiconductor, Trump flat out ignored the judicial order, claiming national emergency. But it is no longer uncontested, because more than just losing value, the dollar may be losing influence. America's most valuable asset since the end of World War II. Global trust, built over decades of predictability, alliances, and respected contracts, is crumbling. And when even Japan, the most loyal and disciplined of US allies, quietly exits through the back door, the world understands the message. The response was immediate. Chief Justice John Roberts made a rare public statement, warning that the erosion of the rule of law undermines the US's international credibility. India, Russia, South Africa, and Saudi Arabia are already integrated into the platform. Even Canada, once America's most loyal partner, now clears transactions directly with the EU and Australia without using the US dollar. And so the question arises, are we witnessing the beginning of the end of the dollar's supremacy? Saudi Arabia, for instance, Brazil significantly increased its gold reserves, and countries like Malaysia, Egypt, and Nigeria are actively seeking more stable alternatives to safeguard their currency holdings. The dollar, long considered a safe haven, began to falter, dropping 2.1% in just 2 weeks. Investors fled to safer assets, and countries like South Korea and Egypt began reassessing their international reserves. With companies like Toyota and Panasonic developing solid-state batteries, ultra-fast charging, and vehicles capable of 750 kilometers on just a 10-minute charge. Japan wasn't just exporting cars, it was exporting the future of electric mobility. While Ford and GM still struggled with supply chain issues and dependence on Chinese raw materials, Japan had already leaped a decade ahead. Trump's response was political. Block Japan's advance with tariffs, not innovation. A symbolic and troubling shift. When a loyal ally lets go of the wheel and the historical adversary grabs it, the message is unmistakable. Something is deeply wrong behind the scenes. Unlike other nations that respond with tariffs Tokyo opted for something more subtle and far more effective. A quiet retreat from the dollar and a redesign of its trade and financial relationships. Japan began negotiating regional settlement agreements using yen instead of dollars. It expanded partnerships with Southeast Asian countries like Indonesia, Vietnam, and the Philippines, and it began building trade routes independent of the Western banking system. While other economies hesitated, Japan held firm, betting on the dollar, on stability. That informal pact abruptly ended in January 2025. The Bank of Japan sold $119 billion in US bonds, marking the largest quarterly reduction since 2012. By unloading a significant portion of US bonds, Tokyo sent a quiet but lethal message. If the US can economically damage an ally for its own interests, Japan can hurt America's financial system at its core. Officially, it was framed as a technical adjustment, but the markets didn't buy it. Economists and analysts saw something much bigger. A strategic withdrawal from a system no longer seen as trustworthy. More importantly, it was a calculated distancing from a partner, increasingly perceived as unstable. The gesture, though silent, echoed like thunder across global markets. What initially appeared to be just another technical adjustment revealed itself to be the beginning of a financial and geopolitical earthquake, one that could redefine the balance of power in the 21st century. In just the 3 days following the decision, $1.7 trillion in market value vanished, one of the worst liquidity shocks in recent memory. The US government, led by Donald Trump, tried to downplay the severity. In public, he joked and made light of the situation. But behind closed doors, the atmosphere was one of chaos. Emergency meetings were called. Advisors scrambled to contain the panic. And within the Treasury Department, the mood was described as tense, nearly unsustainable. But Japan's move wasn't impulsive. Far from it. It wasn't a mere market play. It was a cold, strategic message. Blind trust in the dollar is over. The collapse of silent loyalty. Until then, Japan had been the largest foreign holder of US debt. China takes the wheel. With Japan stepping down as the top US creditor, China took its place. The spark. American tariffs. So what drove Japan to such a drastic decision? Japan's financial response. Japan didn't respond with words. It responded with dollars, and that hurt far more. The reaction was swift and brutal. Yields on 10-year US bonds surged to 4.89%, the highest level since 2007. That spike made borrowing more expensive for the UA global chain reaction. Japan's move may have been a spark for a global reaction against dollar hegemony. Is the new financial order arriving? The upcoming launch of BRICPay, scheduled for July 2025, promises to accelerate this shift. Internal political crisis. The final blow. The markets took it seriously. Moody's downgraded. The EU is the dollar still king. Even Janet Yellen, former Federal Reserve Chair and current Treasury Secretary, admitted that seemingly subtle remark marks a turning point.